Alright, so this one time, I was craving some fast food real bad. It had been a long day, and I was in no mood to cook anything at home. You know how it is, sometimes you just need something greasy and quick to fill you up. So, I decided to hit up this fast food joint near my place. It's one of those places that's open 24/7, always there when you need a late night snack or something. I get there, and it's not super busy, just a couple of people here and there. The place has this weird fluorescent lighting that makes everything look kind of eerie, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I go up to the counter, order my usual burger, fries, and a soda, and then I grab a seat near the back. I like sitting where I can see the whole place. I don't know why, maybe it's a habit or something. Anyway, I'm sitting there, scrolling through my phone, waiting for my food. The staff behind the counter seemed a little off, but I thought maybe they were just tired. It was late, after all. My order number gets called, and I go up to grab my food. As I'm walking back to my seat, I notice this guy sitting a few tables away. He's just staring at me, like not blinking or anything. Just this intense stare. It was unsettling, but I tried to shrug it off. Maybe he was just spaced out or something. I sit down and start eating, but I can't shake the feeling that this guy is still watching me. So I glance up and yep, he's still staring. He's got this weird look on his face, like he's studying me or something. I try to ignore him and focus on my food, but it's really hard when you feel someone's eyes on you like that. You know what I mean? It's like this uncomfortable pressure, like you're being put under a microscope. I keep eating, but I can't help myself from looking up every now and then. Each time I do, he's still there, still staring. He hasn't moved at all, just sitting there with this blank expression on his face. No phone, no food, nothing. Just sitting there like a statue. Now I'm starting to get really uneasy. I start thinking about all the stories you hear about weird encounters in public places, and I'm trying to figure out if I should get up and leave or just stay put. Then, out of nowhere, this other guy walks in. He's dressed pretty normally, but there's something off about him too. He doesn't order anything. He just walks in, looks around, and then sits down at the table right next to the guy who's been staring at me. And just like that, the first guy stops looking at me and turns his attention to this new guy. Now they're both just sitting there, not saying a word, not even looking at each other, just sitting there. I start to get this creeping feeling that something is definitely not right. It's like there's this tension in the air, and I can feel my heart beating faster. I try to play it cool, act like I'm just enjoying my meal, but inside I'm freaking out a bit. I mean, what are the odds of two guys acting this weird at the same time in the same place? I look around the restaurant to see if anyone else has noticed this, but everyone else seems oblivious. The few other customers are just minding their own business, and the staff is busy in the back, not paying attention to what's going on out here. I start thinking maybe I should just leave, but then I think, what if they follow me? What if they're waiting for me to leave? I decide to stay put for a bit longer, hoping they'll leave first. I take out my phone and pretend to text someone, thinking maybe it'll make me look less like an easy target or something. As I'm sitting there, I start to feel this growing sense of dread. I can't explain it, but it's like this weight in the pit of my stomach, telling me that I need to get out of there, but my legs feel like they're glued to the chair. A few minutes go by, and then the door opens again. This time, it's another guy, and he walks in like he owns the place. He doesn't look around, doesn't glance at the counter or the menu. He just walks straight to the table where the other two guys are sitting and takes a seat with them. Now there are three of them, just sitting there in a row, not talking, not doing anything, just sitting there. I'm really starting to panic now. This is too weird to be a coincidence. It feels like some kind of setup, like they're planning something. I start running through all the worst case scenarios in my head. What if there's some kind of gang? What if they're waiting to jump me as soon as I leave? I try to keep calm, but it's not easy when your mind is racing with all these thoughts. I glance over at the counter, thinking maybe I can get the attention of one of the staff members, but they're all still in the back. It's like they've disappeared, leaving just me and these three guys. I take a deep breath and tell myself I need to make a move. I can't just sit here forever. I grab my drink and take a sip, trying to act casual, but my hands are shaking so bad I nearly spill it. Then something even weirder happens. One of the guys, the last one who came in, suddenly stands up. He doesn't say anything to the other two, just stands up and starts walking towards the door. As he passes my table, he glances at me, and I catch this strange glint in his eye. It sends a chill down my spine. He walks out the door, and I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. I watch him through the window as he walks down the street and out of sight. I turn back to the other two guys, and they're still just sitting there. But now they're looking at each other, like they're having some kind of silent conversation. I have no idea what's going on, but I know I need to leave. I gather up my trash and stand up, trying to act as normal as possible. As I head towards the door, I feel my heart pounding in my chest. I try not to make eye contact with the guys, but I can't help glancing over. They're watching me now, both of them, with this almost curious expression on their faces. I get to the door and push it open, stepping out into the cool night air. I take a deep breath and start walking. Not too fast, just a normal pace. I don't want to look like I'm running away. I walk a few blocks before I finally turn around to see if they're following me. The street is empty, no sign of them. I let out a sigh of relief, but I don't stop walking. I just keep going until I'm far enough away that I feel safe. I duck into a convenience store and just stand there for a moment, trying to collect myself. I keep replaying the whole thing in my head, trying to make sense of it. Who were those guys? What were they doing? Were they watching me, or was it just some weird coincidence? I have no idea, but the whole thing left me feeling on edge for days. Every time I went out after that, I found myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see one of them there. I never went back to that fast food place again. I know it sounds paranoid, but sometimes you just have to trust your gut. Something about that night was off, and I'm not about to take any chances. Maybe it was nothing, just some random guys being weird, but I'm not willing to find out the hard way. I've learned that it's better to be safe than sorry, especially when things just don't feel right. I had this strange experience at a fast food place one night, and it still freaks me out when I think about it. It was one of those nights where you're just too tired to cook, and all you want is something greasy and quick. So I decided to hit up this 24-hour burger joint not too far from my place. It wasn't super late, maybe around 11 p.m., but it was dark, and the streets were almost empty. When I got there, the parking lot was practically deserted, which wasn't unusual for that time on a weeknight. There were a couple of cars in the drive-thru, but inside, it was dead. I parked my car and walked in, thinking I'd just order to go and eat at home while watching TV. You know, a chill night. As I walked in, the fluorescent lights inside hit me. They were way too bright for that time of night. There were just two employees I could see. One at the register, a young guy who looked like he was probably in high school, and another person in the back, cooking. I didn't pay much attention to them at first. The place was oddly quiet though. Usually, even when it's slow, there's some kind of background noise. Music, people talking, the beeping of fryers. But that night, it was just still. I figured they were maybe cleaning up or something, trying to get a head start since it was so slow. I went up to the counter and placed my order. The guy at the register seemed a bit off. He wasn't making eye contact, and his responses were super short, almost like he was nervous or in a hurry. I brushed it off though. I thought maybe he was new or just having a bad day. We've all been there, right? So I paid for my food and stepped aside to wait. While I was standing there, I noticed something weird. There was a guy sitting at one of the tables in the far corner. I hadn't seen him when I walked in, probably because he was slouched down and kind of hidden by the booths. He had this hoodie on, the kind that covers half your face, and he was staring at the floor, not moving at all. It struck me as odd because usually, people who sit in fast food places that late are either on their phones or talking to someone. But this guy was just sitting there, completely still. I tried to ignore it, but you know how sometimes you get that gut feeling that something's just not right? That's what I was feeling. My eyes kept darting back to him, trying to see if he was looking at me or not, but he wasn't. Just kept staring at the floor, not even touching the food in front of him. A couple of minutes passed, and the guy at the counter called my number. I went to grab my food, trying to act casual, but I could feel my nerves starting to act up. As I picked up the bag, I glanced back at the guy in the hoodie, and I swear he was now looking right at me. His face was still mostly hidden, but I could see his eyes. They were wide open, unblinking, just fixed on me. I quickly turned away, feeling my heart race a bit. I didn't know what his deal was, but I didn't want to stick around to find out, so I headed for the door, trying to act normal, even though I could feel his eyes on me the whole time. Just as I was about to push the door open, I heard the guy behind the counter say something, almost like a whisper. It sounded like he said, "Wait." I turned back, and he was looking at me with this intense expression, like he wanted to tell me something but couldn't. For a second, I thought maybe I had forgotten something, but he didn't say anything else, just stared at me with this weird look on his face. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should go back and ask what was up, but then I heard a noise behind me. I turned around and saw the guy in the hoodie standing up, slowly. He wasn't looking at me anymore, but at the cashier. It was like there was this silent conversation going on between them, and I was in the middle of it. The air felt thick, like the room was closing in on me. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I didn't want to be there anymore. So I pushed the door open and practically jogged to my car, my heart pounding in my chest. I got in, locked the doors, and looked back through the window. The guy in the hoodie was standing at the window now, just staring out at me, not moving, just staring. The cashier was nowhere in sight. My hands were shaking as I fumbled to start the car. I remember thinking, what the hell is going on? I backed out of the parking spot and sped out of there, not caring if I looked like a maniac. As I drove away, I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see the guy following me or something, but the road was empty. No cars, no people, just the quiet of the night. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just some weirdo and I was overreacting. But something about the whole thing just felt wrong. When I got home, I locked all my doors and windows, which I don't usually do, but I was too freaked out to care about feeling paranoid. I didn't even eat the food, just tossed it on the kitchen counter and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those staring eyes, felt that eerie silence. The next morning I was still on edge, so I decided to check the local news, thinking maybe something had happened at the fast food place after I left. Maybe I wasn't the only one who noticed something weird, but there was nothing. No reports of anything unusual, no mention of the place at all. I went back to the fast food joint a couple of weeks later, out of curiosity more than anything. It was during the day this time, and it was busier, more normal. I went in and ordered, just to see if I get that same strange vibe, but everything seemed fine. The staff was different though. No sign of the young cashier or the guy in the hoodie. I asked one of the employees about them, just casually, like I was making small talk. She looked at me like I was crazy and said they'd never had anyone working there who matched my description. And as for the guy in the hoodie, she just shrugged and said they get all kinds of people late at night, but no one who stands out. I left feeling more confused than ever. I don't know if I imagined it all or if it was some kind of messed up prank or what, but that night something was definitely off, and I still get chills thinking about those eyes staring at me from the corner of the room. It's like they were trying to tell me something I didn't want to know. Even now, I avoid that place if I can. It just gives me the creeps, and every time I pass by at night, I can't help but glance at the window, half expecting to see those eyes watching me again. Alright, here's what happened. It was just supposed to be a normal Friday night. You know, those times when you're too tired to cook, so you just decide to hit up a fast food joint for a quick meal? That's exactly what I did. I went to this fast food place near my apartment. It wasn't one of the big chains, just a local spot that makes a pretty decent burger. I walked in around 9 p.m. The place was almost empty, just a couple of people sitting around. I ordered my usual, cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke, and found a seat by the window. I remember feeling relieved to be there, just to sit down and zone out for a bit. The glow of the neon sign outside was kind of comforting, you know? It cast this weird red light into the room that made everything look different. Not in a bad way, just different. Anyway, I was halfway through my burger when I noticed this guy at the counter. He wasn't doing anything in particular, just standing there, staring at the menu like he'd never seen food before. He was wearing a heavy coat, which was odd because it wasn't that cold out, and he had this big backpack with him. The guy behind the counter was trying to get his attention, asking if he was ready to order, but the guy just kept staring. It went on for a few minutes, and honestly, it was starting to make me uncomfortable. I mean, who just stands there like that? Eventually, he ordered something, but I couldn't make out what he said. He sat down at the table across from mine, but he didn't touch his food, just sat there. looking down at his hands. I tried not to stare, but it was hard not to. There was something about him that was just off. Maybe it was the way he kept glancing at the door, like he was waiting for someone, or maybe it was the way he kept fiddling with his coat, like he had something in there he didn't want anyone to see. I decided to just focus on my food and not get involved. But then he started muttering to himself. Not loud enough for me to hear what he was saying, but loud enough to know he was talking. I glanced over again, trying to catch a word or two, but it was just gibberish. Like actual gibberish. At this point, I was thinking maybe this guy had some kind of mental issue and I should just leave it alone. People deal with stuff in their own way, right? So I finished my food, but as I was getting up to throw away my trash, I noticed the guy was staring at me. Not just looking, staring. His eyes were wide, and there was this intensity in them that sent a chill down my spine. I tried to act casual, like I didn't notice, but it was impossible to ignore. I tossed my trash, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door. But as I was about to push it open, I heard him say something. It was so quiet I almost missed it. He said, "You should be careful." Just like that. No emotion, no context. I stopped and turned around, but he was looking down at his hands again, like he hadn't said anything at all. I didn't know what to do. I mean, what do you do when a stranger says something like that to you? I just wanted to get out of there. So I pushed open the door and left, but that uneasy feeling stayed with me. I kept looking over my shoulder as I walked back to my apartment, half expecting him to be following me. He wasn't, but the whole walk felt wrong, like the air around me was heavier than usual. When I got back to my place, I double-checked that I locked the door. I sat down on my couch and tried to shake off the weirdness. I turned on the TV, hoping some mindless show would help, but I couldn't focus. That guy's face, the way he said, "You should be careful," it was just stuck in my head. A couple of hours passed, and I finally started to relax. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe he was just a guy having a bad day. I decided to call it a night and head to bed. Just as I was turning off the lights, my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "You made it home safe. That's good." I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Who the hell was this? I stared at the message, trying to figure out if it was some kind of prank. I texted back, "Who is this?" No reply. I stood there for what felt like hours, just staring at my phone, waiting for a response that never came. I tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. No name, just an automated voice saying the number was unavailable. Now I was freaked out. I checked all the locks on my doors and windows, turned on every light in the apartment, and sat in the middle of my living room with my phone in my hand. I didn't know what else to do. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I tell them? Some guy at a fast food place told me to be careful and now I got a weird text? They'd probably think I was nuts. The rest of the night was a blur of anxiety. I didn't sleep at all. I just sat there, waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. Morning came and the sunlight made everything feel a little less terrifying. I tried to brush it off as some weird coincidence, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. A few days passed without any incident. I started to convince myself that it was all in my head. Maybe the guy just happened to have my number, a wrong number, or something stupid like that. But then another text came. "You're still being careful, right?" This time I didn't hesitate. I called the cops and showed them the messages. They took it seriously, which surprised me. They asked if I had any enemies, if I thought anyone was trying to scare me on purpose, but I couldn't think of anyone. They said they'd look into it, but I could tell they didn't have much to go on. The number was probably a burner, untraceable. Days turned into weeks, and I didn't hear anything else. No more texts, no strange encounters. It was like the guy just vanished. I was still on edge, but life started to go back to normal. I tried not to think about it too much. Then, one night, I was watching TV, trying to unwind after work. I glanced out my window, just out of habit, and there he was, standing across the street, staring up at my apartment. Same coat, same backpack, same vacant expression. I felt my stomach drop. How did he know where I lived? I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely press the buttons. I told them someone was outside my apartment, that it was the same guy who had been harassing me. They said they'd send someone over right away. I kept my eyes on him the whole time, but he didn't move, just stood there, watching. It felt like an eternity before I heard the sirens. The cops pulled up, but by the time they got out of the car, he was gone, disappeared into thin air. The officers looked around, but they couldn't find him. They asked if I wanted to file a restraining order, but against who? I didn't even know his name. They said they'd keep an eye on my building, but there wasn't much else they could do. That was months ago. I haven't seen him since, but I still feel like he's out there, watching. Every time I go to that fast food place, I can't help but look over my shoulder, half expecting to see him sitting there, staring at me again. And every now and then, I'll get a text from an unknown number. Just random words. Nothing that makes sense. I try to ignore them, but it's hard not to wonder if it's him. If he's still out there, keeping tabs on me. So yeah, that's it. I don't know what he wanted, or why he chose me, but it's messed me up. I don't feel safe in my own skin anymore. Always waiting for the next time he'll show up. For the next cryptic message. And the worst part is, there's nothing I can do about it.